The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to our March Dementia Dialogue entitled Stigma, Advocacy, and Awareness. My name is Heather Mulder and I'm the Outreach Program Manager at Banner Alzheimer's Institute, and I will be the moderator today. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have questions during the presentation, you are welcome to enter them on the question pane of the control panel. It is not likely that we'll have time to answer them during the session today, but we will be sure to follow up with you afterwards. Additionally, we are recording this Dementia Dialogue and it will be posted on our website for future reference within 48 hours of the end of today's session. In 2018, we have, through our Dementia Dialogue series, been in a pursuit of answers where we're asking relatively common questions and bringing in experts to give their perspective on these different questions around Alzheimer's disease. And so our question for this month that we're trying to tackle is, what is being done to make communities more dementia capable for people and their families? We have a couple experts with us today. Jane Gerlicka is the Outreach Program Manager for the Dementia Friendly Tempe program of the Banner Alzheimer's Institute and the City of Tempe. She developed the Memory Cafe at the Tempe Public Library and coordinates the programs for persons with memory loss, monthly education lectures, and the support group for caregivers. Jane has a Master's of Counseling degree from ASU and brings 30 years of experience as a medical social worker. Michael Burke is our second panelist today. Mike brings to the group a varied 35-year background of commercial mortgage brokerage, sales management, real estate development, as well as experience of a former licensed general contractor and a background in renewable energy projects and technologies. In 29 years as a partner with Cardinal Financial Services, he led the company in funding over $1.5 billion in acquisition, development, construction, permanent financing, structured debts, and note sales and acquisitions. Mike is active in his community. In 29 years of Rotary, he's served as president of his club on 2 occasions, but now his main focus is vice president of Gift of Life Arizona, a nonprofit that has performed 283 heart surgeries for children in 12 countries over the past 33 years. Mike and wife Sharon have been married 25 years. She had been diagnosed with early Alzheimer's disease in 2013, and by mid-March 2016, he had to retire and become her caretaker. He found a few support group meetings to attend on the Alzheimer's Association website and started the journey as a caretaker. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here today.
Happy to be here.
Mike, while I would love to focus on all of this really fascinating experience that you've had in the past, I want to start our conversation by talking about why are we even having this conversation? You know, I think ironically, just yesterday we received a notice that the Alzheimer's Association published their 2018 Facts and Figures report, which is really just a comprehensive look at where is Alzheimer's disease in America today. And some interesting things that were brought forward on the surface of that report is currently Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. And there are 16.1 million Americans who provide unpaid care for people with Alzheimer's or other dementias. I bring this up because there is a stigma surrounding Alzheimer's disease, but it's almost hard to believe that people have not been touched by this disease. And so any thoughts on why are we even having this discussion today?
I'm glad we're having this discussion. I've been doing this particular work for about 1.5 years, and I have found that people really are very shy about talking about themselves, about their family, and they do not come forward very easily. The other thing I've heard so much of the time is that people in the community are reticent to even talk with you about it if you bring it up as part of your family. I've heard that from a number of caregivers, and it seems to be holding true even in this day and age.
One of the things that I realize is how little I knew about this disease versus cancer or heart or other maladies that people die from until you get in the middle of it. And then you don't realize what you're going through till you talk to other people who express their frustration, and you realize that you're not alone. And it's standard to feel the way you feel because you don't think what you're going through and how you're reacting to it is proper etiquette. You're thinking that you're not good enough, you're doing poorly, you're not the kind of person you should be better than this, and you realize that everybody else feels the same way, and that's important.
Mm-hmm. And I think you bring forward interesting points talking about there's a lot of sometimes shame surrounding a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, and sometimes people can even put blame on that person, and that it's not unique to Alzheimer's. This has happened with other diseases as well in the past, where we think it's that person's fault that they have that sort of condition. So there's shame and there's guilt and there's denial, absolutely. And there's a lot of fear surrounding Alzheimer's disease. Right now, Alzheimer's is the second most feared disease in this country alone. And unfortunately, a lot of times I think when people are faced with something that they're scared of, it's much easier to just pull back from it and try to not even deal with it. And then when it comes to your personal life, it's like you're thrown into the fire and you don't have an option. You have to face it now. So I think I agree with both of you. This is a really important conversation that we're having today.
I would add to that, when people have cancer or heart problems or other illnesses, they will admit they have it. Mm-hmm. You are dealing with someone with Alzheimer's that thinks everything is just wonderful. They don't acknowledge that there's any problem, and they're sliding, and you're the only one that can see it, and they will fight you tooth and nail every inch of the way.
Absolutely. And we discussed this a little bit before we came online today, that often the person with dementia can hold it together, whether they're at a doctor's appointment or they're visiting with family or friends, and they perform beautifully. Of course, once that interaction ends, the person is probably completely fatigued, and then you see this big exacerbation of symptoms because of that. But the front that they're putting on for everybody is that everything's just fine.
Absolutely. And I think that makes it even harder for the caregiver, because they're the one that is really living with the reality 24/7.
Well, my wife made the comment, "Why are you going down there to talk about me? I'm doing just great," as I left. I wasn't talking about you, but talking about the dementia, but she said, "I'm doing just great. I don't know what your problem is." And that's part of the frustration, is that's what you're dealing with.
It just kind of keeps going in this vicious circle where people aren't talking, the person with dementia doesn't realize something's going on, and it kind of keeps cycling. You know,
I wish it were just a circle. It's a decline. It's like rolling down a hill.
Like a spiral.
Yeah. So the next thing I want to bring up for all of you is I want to talk about how have you experienced the stigma of Alzheimer's disease, because it can be very subtle, or we almost don't even realize that it's happening, to very blatant stigma associated with this disease. And so Jane from the professional side and Mike from the personal side, I'm curious about how you've experienced stigma.
You know, I think that the caregivers experience it every single day. And we talked about this at Memory Cafe this week, and I have a lot of examples that they've dealt with personally. Do you want to start, Mike?
Why don't you go through those?
All right,
and
so I'm going to just throw these out there because this is something that people really will recognize. So a lot of people lose a lot of friends. No one wants to talk to you. They don't know what to say. They don't understand. Another caregiver brought up something that was very interesting. She said, if I tell them that my husband has dementia, then they try to one-up me and tell me that their loved one has cancer. So sometimes people are not accepting and not productive. They're very defensive about it. Another gentleman said it was like going through a divorce, because the friends you used to have that used to socialize with you and be involved with you every week, now they're moving away, and in a way you're losing your whole social network. The other thing I hear very frequently is that the children are backing away. They don't want to deal with it. They are in denial, and that's very hard on the loved one because you depend on your family and you want them around for social reasons and for help. But oftentimes they have a family of their own. They are very busy, and the caregiver ends up feeling very abandoned. Do you want to talk a bit about your experience?
Well, I was lucky after the diagnosis that the neurologist stressed the importance of going to support groups. And I've been in other support groups and I've seen the value of them. So one of the people that I knew very well he had early onset and he could still talk. So we sat down for about 15 or 20 minutes and he told me what to expect. Not to be able to find the car, fire in the microwave, can't get home when you're driving. And the thing that hit me hard is we saw that, or walking away from a group, for example, just taking off. We saw that in Sharon's brother about 10 years earlier, and we had no idea that we'd be dealing with it. We never thought it would happen to us. So for other people, you have no plan B about how do you handle this. And the only thing that was nice, or the only pleasant part about this whole thing, is when it happened, I didn't have a meltdown. It was like the first time there was a fire in the microwave, I just got up. It was 5 a.m. I got the call from the kitchen when I was in bed, and it was more like, okay, now we can check that box. It wasn't like complete meltdown. What's going to happen? Why did it happen? So having some knowledge about what to expect next, boy, it's really important. And for people that are trying to understand this thing and develop it alone, I don't know how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that we talk about with Jan and at the Memory Cafe is I learned it, the first support group I went to, what they call the 40-hour rule. And that 40-hour rule is take no feedback from anybody that hasn't spent 40 straight hours with the loved one. And that applies more to kids, brothers, sisters, children, whatever, because for 2 or 3 hours, they can put on a great front. But try it for 48 hours, then they'll start to see what happens. And that was probably the best advice and we bring it up all the time.
We hear that over and over.
People will say, well, the kids don't admit, and it's like, until they spend 40 hours straight with the person, they have no right to ever contradict what you're doing as the caretaker, because they don't really see the full picture. And that was probably the best advice, and we throw it out all the time.
We do.
At the Memory Cafe that I received. The other thing that they talked to us about early on, and it sounds easy, but it's not, is to pretend that the first time when they ask a question, you've heard it for the first time. And that sounds great about 8 o'clock in the morning, but about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's pretty tough. But the family members, my brothers and sisters, when they come to visit us, on the way home, I said, there's one rule in our house, and that's you have to act like every time you hear the question, it's as if you heard it the first time. And as they're leaving, they said, that's the best advice you gave us. Mm-hmm. Because we wouldn't have known how to react to the repeated questions had we not been told that you have to act like, and they understand how difficult it is, because when they see it, it's like, how does he do this all the time?
Right.
And they get a chance to go through it. The other thing, you want me to keep going, Sue?
Sure.
Is understanding perseveration, where once there's a thought that's in the head of my wife, that's all I hear about that day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it could be something in the garage that I didn't throw away. It could be something that needs to be done. Whatever it is, and understanding that's part of the disease made it easier to at least hear every day. And then initially I tried to take care of it every day. And then I realized it's better to hear the devil you know rather than the devil you don't know. So I started dragging my feet. So at least she'd be talking about something that I knew she'd be talking about. So everybody has a different mechanism on how to deal with this thing. But planning parties, planning family outings, planning whatever becomes so different. By the time we had the first party that we put together with her, I was sorry I ever did it. Who's coming? What are we going to eat? What time is it? Who's coming? What time are we going to eat? What are we going to have? Do we have enough food? Do we have this? And by the time it started, I was just so tired of the whole event. I was sorry I even did it. You learn later on, just surprise them.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them maybe an hour or two before it's going to happen that there's going to be a party and here's the food, and it works out great.
Mm-hmm.
But you learn coping techniques because somebody else went through it,
mm-hmm.
and they tell you what they did to solve the problem, mm-hmm. or how they handle it, and then you go, I can do that.
Yeah.
So what happens with Dementia Friendly Tempe, Memory Cafe, other support groups, is you finally get a toolbox to carry around with you. Mm-hmm. And you got some tools in it that you can pull out. Many times you misuse them. A lot of times I get angry. But those are the kind of things that I learn. And the other thing is, too, being able to pass it on to people that are coming in now, makes it, gives you a little bit of satisfaction that you're going through it for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
That you can help somebody else out.
Yeah. And I think these are all really great examples that you're giving, and you keep reiterating that point about how important it is to get connected. But for the general public or for family members or friends that are removed, these are really difficult lessons to handle, which is why I think people pull back, and then we get that stigma associated, because when you see behavior changes in someone, it's hard to understand why that's happening. So we've thrown around this term a couple times already this morning, the Memory Cafe and Dementia Friendly. What kind of initiatives do we have that are underway right now to work with not only caregivers and people impacted, but try to work with the general public as well?
Absolutely. So it really started here in our area about a couple years back. In 2015, at the White House Conference on Aging, the city of Tempe was designated as one of 5 upcoming dementia-friendly communities that could lead the way to making our communities more friendly. Mayor Mitchell was going through it as a family member because his mother has dementia, and he not only watched his mom, but he also watched his dad as a caregiver, so he was very personally involved. The goals for Dementia Friendly Tempe are to raise awareness of and foster respect for people with dementia and the family caregivers, to provide services and resources to ensure meaningful access to community and promote quality of life, to support and educate people with dementia and their care partners, and to promote meaningful engagement in community life. So in March of 2016, we held our first community summit, and it attracted over 100 people. And these were people not only dealing with dementia themselves, but caregivers and people in the community that were interested. And what they found and were surprised is that people not only wanted to hear about it, but they needed answers right away. They needed to know where to go for services. So in September of 2016, we started the Memory Cafe at the Tempe Library. And what that is a time for people with memory loss and their care partners to get together with each other. And it is totally free. and it is open to anybody in the area. You don't have to live in Tempe. And you come on down, and we have a cup of coffee, and we have conversation, and we have meaningful activities for people with memory loss, and then a support group for the people who are caring for them. And we've had great success on both sides. The people with memory loss are enjoying their activities. We sing, we dance, we do art, we tell stories. The most recent one, which was a surprise, was that we had a librarian who brought in fairly easy to look at books. And the group loved it because so many of them love to read, but it's hard to read right now. They've developed difficulty with their memory, remembering what they just read. Great success there. The biggest part that has been a bit of a surprise is that beyond the people with memory loss, the support group has been so successful. And the people describe it as a lifeline. Once a week, I have time to talk about what I'm going through, uninterrupted, knowing that my person is safe. So that's been the heart of our program. We're also providing education at a monthly seminar. And a little later, I'm going to start talking about our Dementia Friends program, which is a huge education piece.
Mm-hmm. So lots of efforts underway locally here in Arizona, and Dementia Friendly is actually a nationwide initiative. And so if people are interested in looking more, you can Google Dementia Friendly America and find out other communities across the country who are getting involved, or maybe even look into getting your own community involved in these efforts. We keep kind of hammering on this support group, get connected, creating these safe spaces. You know, Mike, you've been involved in the Memory Cafe and Dementia Friendly for a little while now. What kind of impact has this had for you and your wife?
Well, that hour and a half break every week is wonderful. There's a lot of education that goes along with it. The experiences and solutions that people come up with are initially you're just taking notes every hour. I mean, then as later on it gets to be more social, but there's so much education that's put out there at the beginning. Gets into public safety, sanitation, driving. There's all sorts of issues, adult daycare options, family issues with children and grandchildren. All those are discussed along with how to make your doctor's visits more productive. I mean, it just covers the whole gamut. And it's usually somebody will come up and say, I have this problem today, and everybody offers their advice. It's very loving.
Yes.
There's no attacking, and it's a safe place. There's a phraseology. I don't know how they do it on the other side. My wife, every once in a while, come and say, I know I'm supposed to say this right when she has a question, because she knows she's repeated this question many times. And it's amazing when they put a little effort into their question, how easier it is to hear the thing for the umpteenth time. The other thing that happened one day, and it's a long time ago, I was sitting in a chair having my cigar, and she said, I know when you're in this chair, I'm not supposed to bother you. And I said, where did you learn that? And she said, at Dementia Friendly Tempe. So there's some education that also goes into the people who have the disease that benefits us. I can't tell you exactly what they're telling them, but I know those are two specific examples of how it has changed. It has really helped me. I mean, it all helped, but those two specific examples affect my daily life in a very positive way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then if we take a step broader from that, obviously these sort of interactions are working on an individual and a family level, but I think the beauty of these sort of projects is that you're creating a community, you're creating a safe space where people just get it who are around you. And, you know, your person can repeat themselves, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
Everybody gets it. So I'm curious too, as we take this out another level, what do these efforts, how do they impact the broader community?
What we're trying to do with our Dementia Friends is an education program that teaches people the 5 key messages about dementia. And we're going to try to reach every segment of the community, like faith communities, the government, transportation, all places where someone with memory loss will have an interaction. In other words, if you go to the grocery store and you're a little befuddled, hopefully someone there will be kind and help you find what you're looking for. And that's our goal, is to just make it a friendlier, kinder place for that person who's got some memory loss and their family.
It is incredible how often you run into a family that's impacted by dementia, just out in the general population. I recall recently being at a Target, and there was a couple who was trying to go shopping, and the woman obviously had dementia, and trying to navigate the dressing room with a store clerk who wasn't sensitive to those needs, who was trying to keep them separated and have him call into her. And
yes.
So I think these efforts are hugely important, just to make simple accommodations to make a big difference in the day-to-day life of someone who's living with this illness. I want to wrap things up by briefly discussing how can other people get involved, because there's so many incredible things happening in this initiative.
I know we're short on time, so I'll be really quick here. On Saturday, April 7th, from 10 a.m. until noon, at the Pyle Center in Tempe, we're going to have the Dementia Friendly Tempe Summit. And at that event, you will learn what we've done to date and all of the programs that are coming up in the future. I recommend you go ahead and try to register for that. I'm going to give you a phone number, and it'll be on our tapes when you're looking later. It's 602-839-6850. The friendly thing we're doing for that one is that respite care will be available, so you can bring your loved one, but please register so we know that you're coming. Mike, you want to talk a bit about the walk?
There's a walk for Alzheimer's in November, and our Rotary Club, the Phoenix Arcadia Rotary, had been doing a zoo walk in April for years prior. And I approached Dementia Friendly Tempe to see if they would be interested in becoming one of the charities of the zoo walk. So it took a little time. We got it put together. So on the 28th of April at the zoo, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., we're going to have a zoo walk with the beneficiary being Dementia Friendly Tempe. There'll be some people there with services. We're looking for sponsors too that would be interested in offering their services or help. We'll have small tables, for example, for $350, up to major sponsors for water and sponsors that can get a couple thousand. But any phone numbers or if you go to Parkwalk, PARCWALK.org, it'll explain that. People will be happy to get involved with you. But in addition to helping the charity out, you have the zoo to yourself for 2 hours in the morning when the animals are up and around, not when they're sleeping in the afternoon. And we've been lucky, the weather's been perfect, and everybody's had a great time. And for anybody that wants to go in the morning, it's a day pass. You get a bracelet that takes the whole day. So it's a very economic way to enjoy the zoo. We'd like to help Dementia Friendly Tempe out. Plus, I think there'll be opportunities to ask questions. You were talking about having staff members.
They'll have
there.
lots of resources available.
Yeah, there's questions and answers that can be done. And again, this is the first year, so I'm sure we're going to make some mistakes. But it should be a very good learning experience for everybody, and I think anybody that shows up will find it time well spent.
And this is a good way to fight stigma, because we'll all be out there for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to tell you before we finish up that we do have a website that you can get all this information. It's www.tempe.gov, GOV/DFT, and we'll have the schedule of all of our events and our programs.
Thank you so much. Lots of exciting events coming up in April with both the summit and the zoo walk. So I hope our attendees can come and invite your friends to join us as well. I want to thank Mike and Jane for coming and sharing your expertise with us this morning. And to all of our attendees, I invite you to join us next month on April 18th, where we are looking through a diverse lens, and we're going to be tackling the question, how is dementia and caregiving perceived in different cultures? Wow. As a reminder, thank you so much for attending this morning. Use your voice and let us know what you thought about today's session. As soon as we close, you'll be emailed an evaluation. Please take a few moments to give us your thoughts. As a reminder too, our session has been recorded today, and it will be posted on our website within 48 hours of the close of today's call. I want to thank you for attending Dementia Dialogues, where we bring the dementia education to you.